¿Nos puedes dar una idea cómo es cómo es un día normal para
Sí. Un día muy típico en Corea, para mí,
sí, para
para mí o para los extranjeros en general.
para los maestros de inglés que viven aquí?
Pues, número uno, los coreanos aman a los extranjeros. Les gustan los extranjeros, especialmente cuando hablan español, en inglés, pero también cuando hablan en español. En Andong específicamente hay estudiantes que quieren aprender español.
¿Verdad?
Sí,
Entonces,
sí.
¿has enseñado español una vez a esos estudiantes?
Solo un estudiante, pero encontré un adulto cuando vi en Yechan en el año pasado. Hubo una persona que quería aprender español. Y entonces los idiomas hicimos un intercambio.
Intercambio. Entonces,
Sí.
no te pagabas.
Sí. No.
Pero,
Fue gratis.
gratis, pero en cambio, esa persona te enseña
Sí.
algo.
Coreano.
Entonces, ¿sabes hablar japonés?
Ahora? Oh my god.
Sample.
Okay.
Japonés.
Okay, por ejemplo, en japonés, watashi wa gakusei desu yo. En coreano, 저는 학생입니다.
They have the same structure.
네.
But the words could you give some tips, or what is your opinion regarding learning a language in the country where it is spoken? Because most people say that it is not necessary, which I kind of agree to. But what about you're experiencing it now? You're here in Korea, so you're learning firsthand.
Well,
How is it?
For me, it definitely would have been a lot easier for me to get around. When I first came to Korea, I already taken, at least one semester of
Had some basic.
Korean. I literally started reading. I started learning to read the week before I came over. But luckily, the Korean alphabet is not that hard. I still have problems with certain consonants and vowels, because we don't really transcribe them correctly in English, but I guess we just don't know what letters to use. For example, people who are learning, when you see the combination E-O, it's not E-O, it's O. And even then, some of the romanization of Korean words is kind of wrong here. You can see them on the expressways. There is a university in the city called Daegu, which is just a little over an hour from Andong. The university is called Gyeongbukdae Hakyo. Yes. But the way they romanize Gyeongbuk, they spelt it Kyungpuk. Kyungpuk. So if you get into a taxi and ask to go to Kyungpuk University, the taxi driver is probably going to look at you.
I think it's the same thing that happened with Samsung, which is Samsung.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's why it really pays to learn Hangul, since it's so simple. At least you'll have more accurate pronunciation and stuff.
Yes, exactly. And even for the city Seoul, because even in Spanish they say Seoul, and in English we say Seoul, but even then it's a little bit wrong. So Seoul. Yes. Because I really didn't start taking classes in Korean until I had been here like maybe 7 months. So that was pretty bad. Considering I am a language freak. But I did start studying independently after maybe my first or second month here, when I was more comfortable reading and writing the alphabet. So I got to the functional level of Korean on my own, and then I started making friends with many of the people in the program talk. Some of them are overseas Koreans, and many of them were just born outside of Korea. Maybe some of them are half Korean. I started making friends with a lot of the Koreans that I met in the country as well, and other non-native speakers who were learning Korean. So we all started helping each other. I'm at a point where I can hold a conversation as long as people don't use too
How
much
about
slang.
dramas? Do you understand them when you watch them?
Somewhat, but sometimes they still use phrases that I've never heard before, and so I usually watch dramas with subtitles. But while I'm watching with subtitles, I'm listening for what people are saying, and I'm like, that's not quite what they said, but I get as long as I can get the gist of what people are saying, that's all that I really care about.
Yeah, it's really helpful for practice. So how do people react? How do Koreans react when they find out that you speak their language?
Well, the older generation, since they usually can only speak Korean, you know, they're very pleased when they find a foreigner who can speak Korean. In fact, when I lived in Yecheon last year, there would be times when like elderly people, well, elderly but also middle-aged people, would say things to me in Korean. Many times they were they were helping me or they were complimenting me, and sometimes I just didn't know what they were saying. But as I started taking classes and I was able to understand more of what they were saying to me, I started responding more in Korean, and then they would tell me things like, 한국말 잘 하시네요. And I always respond like, no, not really. 아니에요. But they are really pleased when they find out. The younger generation, because they're a little bit more exposed to English than the previous generations, sometimes they are just as pleased, but they're also shocked because because they mostly know what they've heard from friends about foreigners being able to speak English, which in most cases we don't speak Korean. So they learned about that from their friends as well as from their older family members. So they want to practice English with us as much as possible. And in my case, many times many of the Korean friends that I've made didn't know initially that I was learning Korean or that I could speak at all. And so I would just let them like keep speaking to me in English until they would get stuck trying to explain something to me. And when they just couldn't figure it out, I would ask them in Korean, is this the word or the phrase that you're trying to ask me right now? And then they would become really surprised, like, oh, you can speak.
Really?
Yeah.
He speaks Korean.
Yeah. So that's been my experience since I've been here. Yeah, it's been a little bit mixed. Some people are more pleased, some people are more shocked, but...
How do you maintain your languages? Like, for example, Spanish. I mean, there's no one to speak to here in Korea. Do you have some friends?
Well, I do have a friend here in Andong who is a native speaker of Spanish, so we practice with each other. And also there's actually kind of a large Latino community.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not here in this province, but I ran into a lot of them in Busan as well as Gwangju earlier this year.
What about the Arabic? Any plans for the future?
At the moment, no, not really. I mean, I can still understand Arabic and I can speak it. There are times when I get stuck when I try to speak it, but I experience the same thing when I try to speak English, because on a regular basis, I'm either not speaking English or I use English at a more, not basic, but easier level for non-natives to understand, because I teach on a regular basis. So I get used to like lowering my speaking level, and then when I try to speak with my family, I'm like, wait, what was that word again?
Okay, thanks for watching the video.